I don't think you have to read too deep between the lines on this one. Mario Cristobal just dropped a massive clue about Miami's next and final move in the transfer portal.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, also writer for allhurricanes.com and co-host of Locked On ACC. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. I love this network, and we are available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. On this live episode of Locked On Canes, I am going to predict Miami's 3-deep depth chart coming up for the 2024 season. Ask and ye shall receive. Going to talk about a new crystal ball prediction. Miami has been predicted to land a class of 2024 or class of 2025. What year is it? Well, it's 2024 now. We're recruiting for 2025. Miami has received a crystal ball to land an offensive lineman. But first, as we've discussed, time in and time out in recent weeks on Locked On Canes, Miami has already had an impactful transfer portal class. I believe there's one move left to make. There's one player Miami's been waiting on. And Mario Cristobal on national television this week. So the ACC is holding their spring meetings, Amelia Island, Florida. They just wrapped up. Mario Cristobal this week went on ACC PM on ACC Network, their afternoon show. And, he was talking about the additions Miami's made to the line of scrimmage, how the Hurricanes build from the inside out, right? They should have arguably the best offensive line in the ACC, one of the better O-lines in the country. Miami's defensive line also looks like it can be in some special conversations this year. And Mario Cristobal said this: we're still in the hunt. We need more help in the defensive line position. Portal season is never over, so we're always at work. Hopefully, Cristobal said, we'll be able to solidify that in a couple of days or so. Now, folks, when I watched that interview, and there was some other good stuff that Cristobal said that we're going to talk about, but when I'm watching that interview and I hear him talking about, hey, hopefully we'll be able to solidify that, talking about the defensive line in a couple of days or so, I didn't expect him that openly to drop a hint about another player that Miami is pursuing. And I believe that player, and also if you've noticed, you've seen some clues that were dropping last night. Dennis Smith, D-Train, who's outside of Elon Musk, the most powerful man on the X app, tweeted out like a scary-looking creature. Again, you try to figure out what D-Train's tweets mean. It's like a abstract art. You don't always know. Coach Cooney dropped something that looked like a clue for last night. So maybe Miami is expecting some news soon from former Tennessee Volunteers defensive end Tyler Barron. That seems to be, if you read between the lines, again, you're talking about another move potentially being made on the defensive line, solidifying that spot. Based on everything Miami has already done in the portal, the players that they've landed versus the players that they've missed out on at defensive line. As far as I can tell, and you guys know I cover Miami pretty closely, as far as I can tell, the only remaining player, especially on the defensive line, that the Miami Hurricanes are still in the mix for is defensive end Tyler Barron, who, in winter transferred from Tennessee to Louisville. He's leaving Louisville. He's back in the transfer portal without playing a snap there. And the finalists for Barron, I think it might be down to 2, although technically maybe there's still 3 in the mix, but USC, Miami, and maybe Ole Miss, although I've heard some things over the last few days that the Rebels may no longer really be in it for Barron, and it may be USC versus Miami. And guys, again, I think Miami's defensive line is already, as Larry David would say, pretty good, even if they don't make this addition. But this is definitely a player. You add him if you can in Barron. senior, so he's already got that experience. He's looking for one more, final really good year before he can go to the NFL draft next year. Final year of eligibility, 6'5", 260 pounds. So he's already got that prototypical body type to dominate on the edge. Tyler Barron has over 100 now career tackles. Last season at Tennessee, had a career high 5 sacks, had 10.5 tackles for loss. Had he been on Miami doing that, he would have been behind only, I believe, Kiko Maui-Noa, who had 18 TFL, Ruben Bain, who had 12.5 TFL last year. And Barron, of course, played a tougher schedule than Miami did, being at Tennessee, put up really good numbers. Going through some of his, NFL scouting profiles, because, again, Barron is going to be, wherever he ends up, whether it's Miami or USC or Ole Miss, he's going to be an NFL draft prospect a year from now. And on his NFL scouting reports, one NFL scout said about Tyler Barron that he already has NFL caliber spin moves at this point in his career. And he has a verified 4.6 40-yard dash, which is, God, if you can get that kind of speed coming off the edge, you could do a lot worse than that. And, you've got to think about the opportunity that Tyler Barron could have potentially for 1 year at Miami. The idea of being coached for one season to help prepare you for that next level by a Pro Football Hall of Famer, Jason Taylor, who's on Miami's staff, Miami's defensive line coach, putting them together, putting JT with Barron for one season. If you're making those career decisions that Tyler Barron is certainly making, that's not a bad guy to work with for a season. If I can get that tutelage from guy who's got that gold jacket, right? Guy who put up monster sack numbers for so many years with the Miami Dolphins, that's not a bad opportunity. And then, of course, other things come into play. This is 2024 when you're talking about recruiting and transfer portal. Of course, there are NIL components to this. We know both Miami and USC and Ole Miss, if they're still in it, are three of the better, if not three of the best NIL situations in the entire country. So I'm sure that whatever sort of bidding is going on has been very, very competitive. And so we shall see. I from what I understand, some people had the incorrect information that that he had to be enrolled in time to enroll for summer A. I think he can enroll for summer B, which the deadline has not passed for that. So there's no strict academic timeline for Tyler Barron to declare right now whether he's going to go to Miami or USC or Ole Miss. He would potentially enroll in whatever summer session he can get here in time for. In fact, not every single player who's still coming in is enrolled for summer A. I know Damian Martinez, I don't believe, is arriving until June. I think some of Miami's recruits who still, there's some high school graduations that have not happened yet for the guys who weren't able to leave their high schools early, are not going to be here until June. So if Barron were to decide Miami is the place for him, that decision could hopefully come down within the next couple of days. And yeah, if you're reading the tea leaves, if you heard what Mario Cristobal had to say on ACC Network, and you're seeing some of those cryptic tweets that are coming out from Miami staff, you think something might be about to happen there. And we're going to have a lot more happening on this episode of Locked On Canes. By the way, the EA Sports college football game, they did a reveal for the reveal. They actually sent out today, we are revealing that our full reveal is coming out tomorrow. How about that? It's amazing the way that they play that long game with, clickbait stuff. But I am excited for the EA college football game. One thing that we know about it for sure is it's coming out July 19th. It's coming out July 19th. I'm going to be playing as Miami, of course, on my Xbox with Cam Ward, Damian Martinez. I'm going to be sacking people with Ruben Bain coming off the edge. And, I'm going to try to get some safeties with Kiko Maui-Noa. Now, if they make the game really authentic with the ACC officials, Kiko's going to tackle a quarterback 5 yards into the end zone, and they're going to say, not a safety. He was at the 1 yard line. It's good. But, folks, we have a lot more to talk about in this episode of Locked On Canes. We're going to predict Miami's 3-deep depth chart. And coming up next, we will talk about a new recruiting crystal ball, and it's in the trenches. I know Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal, they're putting in that time, all that evaluation that they do. It never stops. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. And I already know you're keeping it locked to FanDuel. Guys, it's playoff season. We've been living and dying with these Florida Panthers. I know the Miami Heat are out of it, but we're still playing these NBA matchups. It is winner take all time in the NBA and NHL. And FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props like the Jalen Brunson overs or the Alexander Barkov overs, and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Folks, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. Guys, make sure if you're watching us live here on YouTube, you smash that thumbs up button, subscribe to our channel. You listen to the audio version, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Make sure you subscribe to our channels. All right, so a new crystal ball from Miami. And I will admit, this is a player I did not know much about when this prediction came through. In fact, I'm trying to figure out how to pronounce the young man's name. Because whenever I see a last name that has like an X in the end of it, and you're not sure, is the X silent or like I get sweats. Like how do I pronounce this young man's name? But there's a 3-star offensive lineman who Gaby Urrutia from Inside the U, shout out to Gaby, dropped a crystal ball for Miami to land. 3-star interior offensive lineman, Takaylen, is it Meux? It's Meux. Again, when I see that, I break out. I know he goes by TK, so we'll just call him TK. Takaylen Meux, aka TK, has been crystal balled to land at the University of Miami. 6'4", 340-pound interior offensive line prospect. He's out of Neptune Beach, Florida, which I think is in the Jacksonville area. So obviously, anytime we're talking about offensive line scouting, we always have to defer to Alex Mirabal and Mario Cristobal, right? I mean, sometimes when you're talking about like, oh, this guy's a 5-star, this guy's a 3-star. Apparently, there are some comparisons going around to TK, comparing him to Inez Cooper when Big Coop was coming out of high school a few years ago. So far, Big Coop at Miami is working out pretty well, okay? So if they see some similarities there and they look at this guy as someone that they can develop, in fact, they just scouted him in the Jacksonville area last week, and apparently Miami's coaches and Mirabal, they were so blown away with what they saw from this young man, they invited him down to take an official visit to Miami, and we're starting to see the sentiment turn in Miami's favor. The crystal balls coming in for Miami to land TK, and so we'll have to see what happens there. Recently, remember, offensive line. Now, the other guy is a tackle. I think TK is going to be a guard or center prospect, but Miami did recently lose Lamar Williams from their offensive line class. So TK is a guy, apparently, they've really identified as someone that his game jumped out to them. They wanted to invite him down for the OV. We'll see how that OV goes. We've seen the comparisons to Inez Cooper. So hopefully, if he does end up here, we can get something in that regard. So, folks, we're going to be answering questions from you guys on this episode of Locked On Canes. You want to join our Locked On Canes Insiders chat? Click the link in the show description below. Become a Locked On Canes Insider. You get text messages directly from my phone to yours, one-on-one questions and answers, show Q&As. I give you guys breaking portal news and scoops, recruiting information. By the way, this became official since our episode yesterday. Yesterday, we talked about the strong possibility of this happening. It has happened that Cormani McClain is a Gator. Cormani McClain, former Colorado defensive back, former 5-star cornerback coming out of high school, a guy who he spurned both Miami and Florida, spurned them both in the recruiting class of 2023. He now winds up in Gainesville through the transfer portal. A lot of people, because I see Gator fans and Miami fans like arguing about this on X. It's like a lot of people probably expect me to come out and rip the move for Florida to bring, Cormani, who was essentially booted off the team at Colorado. They think I'm just going to rip that move. The fact that Florida appears to be getting Cormani McClain as a preferred walk-on not taking up a scholarship, I think that's a fine move. Like you're looking at a player who has obviously top end talent. A couple years ago, coming out of high school, was one of the top recruits in the entire country, a 5-star former cornerback. So obviously the talent and the potential is there. And the fact that you're not using a scholarship on him basically means one of two things. If it doesn't work out, if McClain has some of those same issues at Florida that he had apparently at Colorado, and showing up to meetings, showing up to classes, if there's any disciplinary issues, you can cut bait pretty easily on a player who's not under scholarship. And if he does overachieve, those expectations as a walk-on, you can give him a scholarship for the following season. You can maybe compare it to a move that Miami made last season that didn't work out, but it was pretty easy to move on from the situation. You remember when a little less than a year ago, Miami brought in former Alabama defensive tackle Jamil Burroughs, who was he was like a 5-star talent coming out of high school, but had some disciplinary issues, had gotten in a fight, threw a punch at a coach when he was at Bama. So Miami had brought Burroughs in as a walk-on. Things didn't work out. Sides went their two different ways. I don't think it set Miami back. Burroughs obviously needs to figure things out for himself, but I see the move as similar to that. Low risk, high reward. Now, I will say this, and Florida's got a pretty good defensive backfield. So I don't expect Cormani McClain to be a starting cornerback for them week 1 against Miami. And if he is, I think the Gators are in serious trouble, because if last season at Colorado showed you anything off the field and on the field, Cormani he's a ways away. And he did get burned quite a bit. In fact, he went head to head against Cam Ward last year when Cam was at Wazoo, and Ward completed 8 of the 11 targets thrown against McClain. All 8 of those were for first downs. So if Florida has to put Cormani on the field week 1 against Miami, advantage Miami. But I don't think they're going to have to do that. I think this is going to be basically a red shirt year for him. They're going to see how he does behind the scenes and see if he can, take his development to the next level. So listen, I'm not going to rip the move. I mean, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out for them. So power to them for making that move. We got a question from a Mary Kane who said, "Hey, Donno, how are we feeling about that UF game time slot? 3:30 p.m. in the Swamp on Saturday, August 31st. Now, I know a lot of folks, just by the nature of the matchup and that time of year, Florida usually gets night games at home because it's so humid and so swampy, for lack of a better word. A lot of Gator fans expected it to be a night game. The fact that it's a 3:30 game, hear me out. I think that's advantage Miami, right? Because obviously, if this was like Florida, playing against like Utah, who they've opened up seasons before against in recent memory, the last couple of years, home and away with Utah. If it was Florida against Utah for a 3:30 Saturday game, you'd say huge advantage Florida, because that dry heat in Utah, they're not going to be able to play in Gainesville in an afternoon game in late August. It's not going to happen. But obviously, Miami is used to those sort of conditions, right? I don't think Florida is going to have, it's plenty of humidity down here, folks. I don't think Florida is going to have a big advantage with it being a 3:30 game. I think both teams are going to be sweating a lot and would probably both wish it was a night game. But where I think it's advantage Miami is, and this is pretty obvious, for as great as that atmosphere is in Gainesville, all the sellouts and people come from miles away. Gainesville becomes, they probably quadruple their population on game days. For as great as that atmosphere may be, there's always something extra from those crowds when you're talking about an 8 p.m. game, 7:30 p.m. game. So I don't think Miami is going to have as much of the road disadvantage for a 3:30 game as they would if that was an evening crowd. So that's an advantage Miami. And it's an advantage for any of us who were planning on maybe doing a heck of a road trip, driving up and back the same day. Maybe you don't have to stay in a hotel in Gainesville for a night. That's a bonus. All right. So, I think that in a weird way, I think the game time probably favors Miami a little bit more than it does Florida. All right. When we come back, got a loaded question, and I'm going to take a stab at it. And now I will offer this disclaimer. Miami, of course, there are certain players Miami has added in this spring transfer portal I haven't had a chance to watch in person. Haven't practiced with Miami teammates. So I'm going to have to make a few guesses here, but educated guesses on what Miami's 3-deep depth chart is going to look like this coming season. So you don't want to go anywhere, my friends. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube, and we're part of the incredible Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I appreciate you guys supporting the show. Best ways to do that, if you want to join our Locked On Canes Insiders, we're always happy to have you in that chat. Even if you don't, you can help us out by smashing that thumbs up button, that like button. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can subscribe to our audio platforms on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And I appreciate the support from the everydayers out there. It really means everything to me. We got a question. We got a couple different questions about roster depth. This one comes in. Hey, Alex, while Miami's not quite at the level of 2000 or 2001, I mean, you chose to use the word quite. I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever see another team like those. I mean, 2000 to 2001, it was just look at the future Pro Football Hall of Famers, the future Pro Bowlers. Like, I don't know if we'll ever see something like that again, but I will entertain the question. He says, hey, I think this is the best team we've had in a very long time. How does this roster compare on paper with 2013 or 2017? Well, okay, so out of either 2013, was that Brad Kaya's first year? I think that was when he started as a freshman. 2017 was when our pal Malik Rozier was the starting quarterback. So again, I like them both a lot. Malik Rozier is a personal friend, but right there, I think you've got a size advantage at quarterback with this year's team. I would take Cam Ward over either of them. I would take Ward over most of the quarterbacks in the country right now. And overall, Miami does look deeper than the teams did in either of those years. Like even the 2017 team, I thought that they obviously had an awesome run winning their first 10 games. I thought they punched above their weight a little bit. They had some of those like last second comebacks. I mean, the Georgia Tech game, the Florida State game, of course, which did start a streak of 4 straight Miami wins in that series. But listen, I don't know what it means long term. Does this guarantee Miami wins 10 or more games? I don't know. Every year is different, but I think on paper this year's team definitely looks deeper than 2013 or 2017, and I would definitely take the quarterback over the quarterbacks those years. Sorry, let me answer this question about Locked On Canes Insider wants to know, hey, your 3-deep depth chart at every position. He wants my top 2 at quarterback. Very easy. Cam Ward at number 1. He's your starting quarterback this year. This is not necessarily based strictly on how they performed on the field, but I'm going to go with Reese Poffenbarger at number 2. And the primary reason why I take Reese over Emory Williams is Emery's like right there competing with Reese, but I'm going to go Emory at number 3 because I think it just makes too much sense to redshirt him. Just makes too much sense. He played in too many games last year. If you really want him to be a part of your future plans, maybe a future starting quarterback at Miami, you redshirt Emory Williams this year. So I've got Reese as the number 2 quarterback behind Cam Ward. He wants my top 3 at running back. The top 2 are easy. Damian Martinez. Damian Martinez is your starter, and hopefully he can do what Ray Davis did to Florida's defense last season and just go absolutely bonkers on them. Assuming full health, of course, Mark Fletcher is your number 2. So Damian Martinez, number 1, Fletcher, number 2. The third stringer is a little bit trickier. Maybe, and also because of the different skill set and body type, being the speedster, I might lean to Chris Johnson at number 3 over A.J. Allen. Now, keep in mind also, like, I haven't watched A.J. Allen play since last season because he didn't participate in spring ball. So I feel like my evaluation on him is at a little bit of a disadvantage because I haven't seen him play in so long. So I'm going to give the lean to Chris Johnson at number 3. I'm sure when Miami's depth charts, like the official ones, come out, it'll have like an or between their names where they don't really tell you who the third stringer is. But I'll go Martinez, Mark Fletcher, Chris Johnson. Now he wants the top 8 at wide receiver. So, and I guess I'll go in order here. Number 3 is difficult, but number 1, Xavier Restrepo. Jacoby George, number 2. Just like based on what he's done, like the numbers he's put up, I'll put Sam Brown at 3, Isaiah Horton at 4. That's like an or. Like I could see Isaiah or Sam, one or the other. And again, Sam Brown is someone I haven't watched him play in person. I watched his Houston film, hasn't practiced yet at Miami, so he's a little bit of an unknown for me, even though he put up really good numbers, 815 receiving yards with the Houston Cougars last year. But Restrepo, George, Brown, Horton are my top 4. Then I go Ray Joseph, JoJo Trader, Nye Carr, Robbie Washington. That's how I round out my 8. He wants 3 at tight end. My top 3, I go Elijah Arroyo, number 1, Riley Williams, 2. And then I'm tempted to go Elijah Lofton at 3, but then people are like, well, what about Cam McCormick? Mario loves his blocking, and McCormick's been playing since the leather helmet days. I mean, I'll put an or between their names. I'll go Elijah Lofton or Cam McCormick there. He wants my top 8 on the offensive line. Now, my top 5, since every O-line position is, I'm just going to go like from left to right with my top 5, and then I'll tell you who I think the 3 top guys off the bench would be. So my top 5 on the offensive line, I go Jalen Rivers, I go Samson Okunlola, Zach Carpenter, Inez Cooper, Big Coop, CeCe Maui Noah, and then for the next 3 up, I go Matthew McCoy, Tommy Kinsler, Ryan Rodriguez, who's your backup center. That's my top 8. He wants my top 3 defensive end. I'll go Ruben Bain, coming off that 7.5 sack season, ACC Defensive Rookie of the Year. Ruben Bain, number 1. Then Elijah Alston, number 2. Akeem Mesidor, number 3. Now, if Barron commits to Miami, I put that top 4 in a blender and I'll have to redo it. But that's out of the guys who are, Miami Hurricanes and enrolled. That's my top 3 there. He wants 5 at defensive tackle. I'll go Simeon Barrow, CJ Clark, Marley Cook, Ahmad Moten, Josh Horton. Now, some people be like, well, Justin Scott's better than some of those guys. Again, Justin Scott hasn't enrolled yet. 5-star true freshman. I haven't seen him practice. He's going to be arriving this summer. He hasn't graduated high school yet. Same thing with Artavius Jones. So, I'll have to take them into account when I can actually watch them, because we'll have to find out how ready are they to be instant impact guys, right? Scott and Jones might be, but the previous list is my top 5 till proven otherwise. He wants top 6 linebackers. I will go Kiko, number 1, Kiko Maui Noah. I'll go Wesley Besaint, 2, Jalen Alderman, 3. Alderman's going to compete with Besaint. Again, I haven't watched Alderman practice, but he started every game at Louisville. That was a really good defense last year. He's going to be in there. Then I'll go Popo Aguirre at 4. I'll go Bobby Pruitt at 5, at a really good spring, and I'll go with Chase Smith at 6. He wants 5 cornerbacks. For my 5 cornerbacks, I will go with, obviously, Daryl Porter Jr. at number 1. I'll go with Jadis Richard at 2, had a really good spring. I'll go Damari Brown 3. I will tentatively put Diani Hill at 4, but again, haven't watched him practice. He's the transfer from Marshall. But I think he'll be right in that 3, 4, 5 mix. Then I'll go Robert Stafford 5. He wants 5 safeties. I will go, and this is assuming he plays safety. He may play nickel, but Mish Powell, I'll go him number 1. I'll go Jaden Harris 2, Markeith Williams 3, Zaquan Patterson 4. And then I feel like it's kind of a toss-up between Isaiah Taylor and Brian Ballum after that for 5. Isaiah Taylor, of course, Jason Taylor's son, who's actually a walk-on, a pretty good player, though. So that's where I will go with that. I appreciate everyone who's in here watching us. I love how whenever I look over at the live chat, it always just ends up devolving into Miami and Florida fans and Florida State fans arguing over stuff. People always throw in the 63-3. Remember, 63-3. Yeah, Florida, they were unconquered last year, right? They made rings unconquered. We'll just pretend that last game didn't happen. Well, 13-0, and then, the last one, that one didn't count, right? So thank you so much, everyone, for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Folks, make sure you're supporting all the shows on the Locked On Network, including the other one that I do. I'm on Locked On ACC every day as well. The ACC, boy, what a mess it's been to cover right now. They're getting sued by two teams in the conference. They just had their spring meetings. Kenton Gibbs and I were talking about what went down in the spring meetings. So, everyone, and by the way, I love when Daryl Porter's grandma listens to the show. If you just got in here, you just missed the shout out that I gave to your grandson, who I had ranked as the number one cornerback on Miami's depth chart. So I appreciate everyone tuning in, for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. We will be back tomorrow for a Friday episode, Friday happy hour, right here on Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.